I was elbow deep in another man's bad decisions when my phone lit up with the number that would end my marriage. By the time the woman from Harbor Health Clinic finished talking, the only thing I knew for sure was that whoever my wife really was, I'd never met her. The Honda on Lift 2 smelled like old oil and panicked. Guy had brought it in with a rattle, swearing it just started yesterday. Judging by the sludge welded to the inside of the block, the rattle had been begging for help for at least a year. I had my forearms buried in its guts, knuckles scraped, sweat mixing with grease. The radio low in the background playing the same classic rock that's been on loop my entire life. It was past 9. The shop closed at 7, but nights like that felt better than going home lately. Less silence, less pretending. My phone buzzed on the workbench, screen lighting the shadows with an unknown number. Local, though. Harbor View prefix. I wiped one hand on a rag, left the other still braced inside the engine, and squinted at the display. Harbor Health Clinic. My stomach pinched. I'd been in there a week back. Embarrassing enough on its own. 43, married 18 years, and suddenly dealing with an itch that wasn't going away. I told them it had to be a reaction to the new detergent Celia bought. They ran tests anyway. I thumbed the green button. Yeah, this is Eddie. A woman's voice, professional, too calm. Mr. Malone? This is Dr. Rios from Harbor Health. Do you have a minute to talk privately? The word privately dropped like a wrench. I glanced around the empty shop out of habit. Just me, the Honda, and stale coffee. Yeah, go ahead. I'm calling with your test results, she said. Paper shuffled on her end. Your screening came back positive for a sexually transmitted infection. Everything in me went still. The noise from the tiny radio faded to nothing. Even the ticking of the cooling metal around me seemed to stop. What? Came out flat. No outrage, no drama. Just that one word. You've tested positive for chlamydia, she continued, clinical, like she was reading a weather report. The good news is, it's treatable with antibiotics. We'll need you to come in, and it's very important that your sexual partner or partners also receive treatment. Partner or partners. Celia's face flashed in my head. Her smile at our wedding. Her back turned to me in bed. Phone lighting her cheekbones blue at 2 in the morning. I've been married, I said, my voice slow, hands suddenly cold despite the heat of the engine. To the same woman for 18 years. There was a beat of silence on her end. The kind that says more than words. I understand, Mr. Malone, she said softly. Sometimes these conversations can be difficult. But medically speaking, this infection is transmitted through sexual contact. You'll both need treatment, and you may want to have an open discussion with your wife. Open discussion. I thought of her business trips that started 2 years ago. Insurance seminars in Providence. Overnight training in Boston. New perfume that cost more than my entire tool chest. Showers as soon as she walks in the door, before hugging the kids, before anything. And me. Same routine. Same hours. Same woman. No secrets. No affairs. Nothing. So there were only 2 options. Either the laws of biology just took a vacation for Eddie Malone, or my wife had. I swallowed. Yeah, I hear you, document. I'll come in tomorrow. She went through instructions. Medication. Abstaining from sex for a while. I listened, but my brain was somewhere else. Filing memories under a new label. Proof. The late text she wouldn't explain. The lingerie receipt I found in the trash that never showed up in our bedroom. She laughed too hard at Grant Hollister's jokes at the last barbecue. It's all lined up now. Clean, ugly line. Any questions? Dr. Rios asked. Just one, I said. How long's it been in me? Based on your symptoms and labs, at least a few weeks, possibly longer, she said. But I can't give an exact timeline. A few weeks. Celia's last overnight training had been a month ago. No more questions, I said. Thanks, document. I hung up and set the phone on the workbench like it was something that might bite me. Grease had dried in the lines of my hands, turning my knuckles black and cracked. I stared at them. These were the hands that paid the mortgage, fixed Celia's car, built the deck she posted about on social media like it magically appeared. The hands that had only touched one woman in almost 2 decades. And somehow I'd still brought home a disease. The old version of me, the one from 5 minutes ago, would have felt sick. Would have started doubting himself, wondering what he missed, how he failed. That version didn't make it past that phone call. What replaced him was quieter. I pulled my arm out of the engine, wiped both hands clean, and picked up the phone again. Scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in a while. Tank Johnson. Tank and I had boxed together back when our knees didn't sound like popcorn. He knew things, heard things. I worked security, bounced at Murphy's. There wasn't much in Harbor View that moved without brushing past Tank. He answered on the second ring. "You know what time it is, Malone?" "Yeah," I said. "Are you sober?" "Rude question," he said. But there was a smile under it. "What's up?" "I need the name of somebody who finds things out," I said. My voice sounded different to my own ears, curled in tighter. No room for doubt. The Tank went quiet. "Eddie, you all right, man?" "Never better." He didn't buy it. "Are you talking about money or people?" "People," I said. "I need someone who can follow, watch, and dig. Low-key, discreet." The Tank exhaled. I could hear a sports game in the background, muffled shouting from a TV. "You know the answer to what you're really asking, right?" "I know enough to know I don't have the whole picture," I said. "I'm done guessing." Another pause. "There's a guy. Used to be a cop. Frankie Duca. Got bounced for doing the right thing the wrong way. Drinks too much, but he gets results." "Number?" Tank hesitated. "Eddie, once you open this door, you can't close it. You sure you want to see what's on the other side?" I looked at the Honda, at the mess some other man had created by never changing his oil, never checking his levels, just driving hard and pretending everything was fine until it started screaming. "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure." Tank gave me the number. I wrote it on the back of an old parts invoice with a shaking pen that didn't feel like it belonged to me. "Call him tomorrow," Tank said. "Sleep on it first." "Appreciate you," I said, and hung up. "Sleep on it." I turned off the radio, letting the shop fall into a thick, mechanical silence. Outside, Harbor View was the same safe little town it had always pretended to be. The marina lights would be winking. Grant Hollister would be home in his freshly painted Colonial. Celia would be on our couch, probably scrolling her phone. Half a glass of red wine on the coffee table. TV talking to itself. I stood there in the dark with my hands at my sides and felt something click into place. This wasn't about feelings anymore. Not jealousy, not heartbreak. Those were luxuries. This was about facts. Who? When? How many? How long? I walked to the office, grabbed my jacket, turned off the last light, and locked the door behind me. By the time the deadbolt slid home, I'd made the decision. In the morning, I'd call Frankie Duca. I'd get the truth on paper, in pictures, in whatever form it came, no matter how ugly it turned out to be. The marina was quiet that Friday morning. Boats bobbing, gulls screaming, the tide dragging itself back like it was tired. I pulled up early, parked near the edge where the wooden planks groaned under the breeze, and waited. Frankie Duca arrived 15 minutes late, looking like the kind of man life had chewed on twice and spit out once. Leather jacket too old, beard uneven, eyes sharp in a way that said he still noticed everything. He stepped out of his sedan, didn't shake my hand, didn't smile, just held a thick manila envelope like it was evidence in a murder case. "You Eddie?" he asked. "I am." He nodded once and handed it over. "You're gonna want to sit for that." "I'll stand." He looked at me the way a man looks at a stubborn engine that's seconds from seizing. "Your call." I cracked the seal. Paper, printed screenshots, timestamps, locations. A few thin discs in plastic sleeves. The kind of items that don't need graphic detail to cut a man open. They only need names, faces, and dates. The first page slapped the breath out of me. Celia Malone. Grant Hollister. A hotel in Providence. A date that lined up exactly with her insurance seminar. I kept flipping. Different dates. Different locations. Different men. Some I recognized. Some married. One coached Little League with me for a season. Frankie watched quietly, hands in his pockets. "You want me to stop?" "No," I said. My voice didn't even shake. Keep going. He pointed at a corner of one printout. See that reflection in the window? That's Mona Pierce. Same one. Yeah, I said. She wasn't hiding. She wanted to be seen. There were more pages. Messages Celia had sent. She'd left the kids with me for girls' nights. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals that suddenly made sense. And then the part that made my jaw lock. Videos recorded from inside hotel rooms, angles too deliberate, too staged to be accidents. Again, no details needed. The betrayal in the setup was enough. I shook my head. What the hell is Mona doing there? Frankie pulled a cigarette from behind his ear but didn't light it. From what I can tell, she's been filming your wife's activities. Could be blackmail, could be entertainment, could be leverage. Hard to say, but she's involved. Deeply. I closed the envelope and held it against my chest for a second. Felt heavier now, like it was full of lead. So this is it. This is it, Frankie said. Your wife's been living a double life. And people in this town knew before you did. I looked out at the harbor. The same water I'd fished as a kid. The same docks my old man worked before he blew his back out. Harbor View had always been simple, honest, predictable. But the reflection staring back at me in the rippling water wasn't the same man who'd shown up 20 minutes earlier. Who else knows? I asked. Frankie scratched his chin. More than you think. Less than you fear. But the ones who know? They've stayed quiet because Mona's got half the town by the throat. My jaw tightened. And Celia let herself be part of it. Frankie didn't answer. He didn't have to. Silence confirmed more than words. I walked to the very edge of the dock, enveloped in hand. Boats drifted. The wind pushed salt into my lungs. I thought about 18 years of marriage. 18 years of holidays, bills, anniversaries, fights, repairs, building a life brick by brick. All of it undone by the rust I never saw forming. She made me the punchline of a joke everyone else was in on, I said quietly. Frankie looked at me with something close to respect. Most men break when they see proof. You didn't flinch. I did my breaking already, I said. Now I'm just getting to work. He nodded. What do you want to do next? I slid the envelope under my arm like a loaded tool. Finish what I started. I hired you to get the truth. Now I've got it. And your wife. I took one last look at the harbor, the town, the boats rocking in the calm. She made her choices, I said. Now I'm making mine. Frankie gave a grunt of approval, stepped back toward his car, and paused. You good, Malone? Better than good, I said. I'm done being anyone's fool. He drove off. I stood there alone, listening to the water slap against the pilings. The world suddenly clearer than it had been in years. By the time I walked back to my truck, I wasn't a confused husband anymore. I was a man with evidence, a man with purpose, a man ready for whatever came next. And Harbor View wasn't ready for me. The printer whined like it was begging for mercy. It didn't matter. I fed it page after page. The same cold calm in my veins that I'd had since the marina. The envelope sat open on the kitchen table. I didn't look at the pages anymore. I didn't need to. They were burned into me already. Names, dates, times, the kind of proof no apology could erase. I printed each one, stacked them neatly, punched holes in some, laminated others. Not a rage job. Precise, slow, methodical. By 8 a.m., the stack was taller than a Bible. I started with the kitchen. One photo taped to the fridge. Another on the cabinet door. A message from Celia printed and centered on the pantry. The clean, modern look she'd always bragged about was gone. Replaced by the truth she'd been hiding behind throw pillows and scented candles. Then the living room. A shot pinned near the TV. Another by the fireplace mantel. A timeline taped along the hallway. Dates and locations running like railroad tracks straight into the life I thought I had. Upstairs, I worked through the bedroom. No yelling, no smashing, just placing facts in the spots she'd chosen for comfort. Her vanity mirror got 3 prints, spaced like a museum installation. But the final touch, the part one knew she'd feel in her bones, was the laminated text messages hung from the bedroom fan. Dozens of them, printed, cut, plastic-coated, and tied with a fishing line. When the breeze from the open window hit them, they spun. A mobile of betrayal. Simple, effective, undeniable. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Neighbors walked their dogs. Cars rolled past. Harbor View woke up like nothing was wrong. I changed that. I carried a stack of yard signs out front. Plywood sheets I'd painted white at dawn. Each one held a single page, stapled clean, centered. Nothing graphic. Just the truth. Celia's face, the men's names, dates, confirmations, messages. Enough that anyone who read it would understand without needing details. I lined them across the lawn like election signs for a campaign nobody wanted to win. By the time I finished, people had stopped pretending they weren't watching. One woman froze mid-jog. A couple slowed their car to a crawl. Someone across the street fumbled with their phone, pretending to check a text while recording everything. Let them. I wasn't hiding anymore. I stepped back, looked at the house, my house, and felt the first breath of honest air I'd taken in months. It was almost noon when I heard Celia's car. Her tires screeched before the car even stopped. She stumbled out, sunglasses on, hair perfect, outfit spotless. She always knew how to present herself. Until now. She looked at the lawn first, went pale, then rushed toward the porch. Then froze when she saw through the front window. The kitchen, the walls, the living room, the fan. She screamed my name, voice cracking, shaking with something between fear and outrage. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Phones came up. Someone across the street whispered, "Oh my God!" Celia ran inside. A second later, her screams filled the neighborhood. Not grief, no remorse. Anger, pure, selfish anger at being seen for what she'd been doing. She shouted threats, denials, half-truths. Please. She kicked something. Maybe the vanity chair. Maybe the door. It didn't matter. I watched from my truck parked down the street, engine running. This wasn't for a show. This was for me. Her perfect mask, 18 years old, polished, flawless, was cracking in real time. And she knew it. The neighbors knew it. Harbor View knew it. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to lecture. Didn't need to play the wounded husband. I'd said everything I needed to say with the truth. Celia stumbled onto the front lawn, shaking, phone in hand, calling someone. Maybe Mona, maybe the police, maybe anyone who would still listen. The yard signs waved in the wind like flags at half-mast. I put the truck in drive. Then I did the first selfish thing I'd allowed myself in years. I left, not running, not hiding, leaving because the house wasn't mine anymore, not the version she lived in. The version I rebuilt that morning had served its purpose. As I turned the corner, her shouts swallowed by distance, I felt something settle inside me. Not peace, just clarity. The kind a man only finds when he finally stops lying to himself. And Celia? Her mask wasn't cracked. It was gone. Completely. The fallout didn't take long. By Monday morning, I wasn't Eddie Malone the mechanic anymore. I was the guy who aired the town's dirty laundry. And in Harbor View, airing anything meant betrayal. Not cheating. Not lying. Not the blackmail. Just the exposure. My kids, God love 'em, were the first to hit me with it. "You humiliated Mom," my daughter said over the phone, voice shaking with teenage certainty. My son added, "You made us a joke." I didn't yell, didn't defend myself, didn't say your mother made those choices, not me. They weren't ready for that truth. "I'll be here when you're ready to talk," I said, and they hung up before I finished the sentence. The silence after that wasn't painful. It was expected. By midweek, I walked into Murphy's bar, the same place I'd spent half my adult life, and conversations died so fast it felt like someone pulled the plug on the jukebox. The tank wasn't working that night, probably for the best. 3 of my old friends, Tommy Hargreaves, Mike Dale, and Russell Boyd, sat in a booth near the back. Guys I'd helped move furniture for, guys I'd fixed cars at cost, guys who'd slapped my back at cookouts and called me brother. Tommy eyed me like I'd walked in with a gun. "You shouldn't have done that to Celia," he said before I even sat down. The signs, man. The whole street's talking. I pulled out a chair and sat anyway. Good. Maybe the street needed something worth talking about. Mike leaned forward. You embarrassed the whole community. People got kids, families, jobs. I stared at him. I didn't tell anyone to cheat. That's not the point, Russell snapped. You put it out there. You didn't keep it handled. Handled. There it was, the Harbor View gospel. As long as you keep your sins quiet, you're a good neighbor. Why are you really mad? I asked. Because of what she did. Or because you're worried someone might do the same thing to you. Tommy's jaw twitched. Don't start with that. I'm not starting anything, I said. I'm just saying guilt sounds a lot like anger when someone finally turns the lights on. Mike stood up halfway. You think this makes you some kind of hero? You made a damn spectacle. People are afraid of. Afraid of what? I asked. They didn't answer. They didn't have to. When I stood, Tommy grabbed my arm. Hard. You're not listening. I looked at his hand, then at him. Let go, Tommy. He didn't. Russell got up too, chest puffed, ready to show off. Mike circled to my left, blocking my way out. 3 men, former friends, men with fear bleeding through their teeth. And that was the moment something in me just shut off, quietly, cleanly. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I just saw the truth. They would rather protect the lie of Harbor View than admit their lives had cracks. I didn't give them a speech. I moved. Tommy's grip broke when my fist buried itself in his ribs. Quick, controlled. Years of boxing doing the talking. He folded forward with a wheeze. Mike swung wild. I stepped in, shoulder under his punch, and clipped his chin with a clean right that dropped him straight to the floor. Russell tried to tackle me. I stepped aside and let his own momentum take him into the corner of the booth. He hit with a thud and went limp, more surprised than hurt. 3 men, 30 seconds. I stood there, breathing steady, calm as a Sunday morning. Behind the bar, Carla the bartender froze with her hand on the phone. Eddie, I gotta call the cops. Do it, I said. I'm done here anyway. I walked out while she dialed. People outside pretended not to stare. One guy filmed me from across the parking lot. I didn't stop him. I didn't owe Harbor View anything. Not explanations. Not apologies. Not silence. By the time I reached my truck, the sirens were just starting to echo from downtown. I unlocked the door, slid in, and rested my hands on the wheel. I finally understood. The town didn't hate me because of what I did. They hated me because I proved they weren't as clean as their front lawns and holiday parades. And once a man sees rot, he can't unsee it. I started the engine. Harbor View had made its choice. And so had I. Celia called the following night. I was sitting on the tailgate of my truck behind the shop, watching the traffic on Harbor Road fade with the setting sun. The air smelled like summer rain and hot metal. Peaceful enough that I almost didn't pick up. But I did. Her voice hit me first. Thin, frayed. Not the voice she used with me. The voice she used when she wanted something. Eddie, I'm staying with Mona. I didn't react. Not outwardly. Is it your decision or hers? Silence. Then a breath. She says you need to stop. We need to stop. Before it gets worse. We, I said. There is no we, Celia. Another pause. One I'd grown familiar with. The pause where she waited for me to soften, to fill the silence with comfort. Not anymore. Eddie, she tried again. She wants to talk to you. Of course she did. There was a shuffle. Then a different voice slid onto the line. Smooth, warm, practiced. The voice of a woman who'd spent her whole life being underestimated. Edward, Mona said. You've been busy. She said my name like she owned the ground I stood on. Mona, I said. Are you enjoying the show? A small laugh. I don't enjoy chaos for its own sake, but I do appreciate leverage. And you've created quite a mess for yourself. For myself, I asked. Didn't know I was the one cheating. You made a private matter public, she said, like she was explaining a law I'd broken. You humiliated your wife. You disrespected half the town. And now people are frightened. Frightened people make mistakes. I leaned back on the tailgate, eyes on the dark shape of the ocean beyond the rooftops. Is that a threat? That's a fact, she replied. The crusade of yours ends now. Take down the lawn signs. Take down the prints. Apologize to Celia. Apologize to the community. And disappear for a while. A long while. I almost laughed. Are you giving orders now? Someone has to, she said. You've already done enough damage. I let the silence stretch. Let her think she was winning. Then I asked, what are you really worried about, Mona? A shift in her tone. Barely audible. But there. I'm worried, she said slowly, that you're going to interfere with things you don't understand. Like hotel room cameras? I asked. She didn't answer. Or the fact you've got half the town dancing on strings they pretend aren't there? More silence. Then softly, Edward, stop. You don't know who you're challenging. Oh, but I did. Frankie's files told me enough. Not the worst of it, not yet, but enough to see where the path led. I stood from the tailgate. My voice stayed calm, controlled, as cold. Let me make something clear. I waited. She didn't speak. I've lost my marriage, I said. I've lost my kids. I've lost friends I thought were brothers. My reputation? Gone. My place in this town? Gone. I stepped toward the street, the phone warm in my hand. So now you tell me, what exactly do you think you can take from a man who's already had everything stripped away except his pride? A breath. Sharp. Irritated. Edward. No, I said. You don't get to talk over me. Not anymore. The line went dead silent. If you think losing makes me scared, I said, you don't know me at all. I don't have anything left you can use against me. That makes me one thing, Mona. And what is that? She asked, voice tight. Dangerous. Click. Call ended. I stared at the dark screen, the reflection of my own eyes looking back. Steadier, harder, unrecognizable from the man who got that clinic call a week ago. Mona thought she'd fired a warning shot. She didn't realize she'd missed. And I wasn't done. Not even close. The Harbor View Community Bank didn't look like a fortress. White paint, blue awnings, a flag out front that never touched the ground. But past midnight, with the parking lot empty and the windows dark, it felt more like a mausoleum. Quiet, heavy, hiding something dead inside it. Frankie and I waited in the alley until Riley Carter, the night cleaner, pushed the side door open. Riley was 25, nervous, skinny, and knew exactly what helping us would cost him if things went sideways. You gotta be quick, he whispered. The cameras loop for only 60 seconds at a time. I can trigger the loop twice before the system flags it. Twice is enough, Frankie murmured. I followed them inside. Every step felt like stepping deeper into someone else's version of Harbor View. The real one, the one behind the smiles and the folded flags and the charity drives. The vault wasn't a giant steel door like in movies, just a reinforced room behind a keypad. Riley punched in numbers with trembling fingers. The box is under Pierce, he said. She rents 3, but box 74 is the one she comes in for most. Frankie nodded. We only touch one. We don't leave a mess. Riley swallowed hard and opened the door. Inside, it smelled like cold metal and secrets. Rows of little stainless steel drawers lined the walls. All waiting, all silent. Frankie knelt, flashlight between his teeth, picking at the lock on 74. His hands were steady. Mine weren't. Not shaking, just ready. A click. He slid the drawer out. Inside was a shoebox-sized container, plain, gray, unmarked. Frankie lifted it out, set it on the vault floor, and looked at me. You sure? I wasn't sure when I married her, I said. I'm sure now. He opened the lid. It wasn't money, wasn't jewelry, wasn't what I expected. It was worse. Stacks of photos, rows of USB drives, contracts, banking slips, copies of emails, printouts of private messages, a ledger with names, 40, maybe 50, each with dates and notes next to them. And then videos, dozens of them. Not described, not necessary. The labels told their own story. Mayor, leverage police chief, confirmation grant, ongoing Celia insurance. My stomach dropped. Frankie whistled under his breath. Jesus, Mary, and everyone else. Keep going, I said. He did. Halfway down, we found a folder with my name on it. Eddie Malone. Frankie handed it to me without speaking. Inside were notes, observations, printed photos of my kids, copies of my testimony from 12 years ago, the domestic violence case where I told the truth about Mona's ex-husband beating a woman half to death. He went to prison because of that day. There was a single line written in ballpoint ink across the top of the folder. He took everything from me. I'll take everything from him. Slowly, publicly, completely, my vision tunneled. Not with rage, not with panic, with clarity. I finally understood. This wasn't Celia falling into an affair. This wasn't a marriage drifting apart. This wasn't temptation or midlife stupidity. This was a long-term trap. Planned, funded, executed. Mona had paid men to pursue my wife, had filmed it, had collected it, had used it to ensure Celia would stay tangled and compliant. And then she waited for the right moment to drop the entire weight of it on me like a steel beam. Revenge, I said quietly. That's all this is. A 12-year revenge plan. Frankie closed the lid halfway. Eddie, this is enough to take down the whole town. And she used Celia to do it, I said. She destroyed my family to settle her own score. Riley backed toward the wall. We shouldn't have opened that. Oh God, I shouldn't have. It's too late now, Frankie said. You're in, kid. But so far, nobody knows. And if we move fast, they don't have to. I closed the box gently, like it was a casket. We copy everything, I said. Then we burn the system she built. Frankie nodded. I'll make duplicates. Clean ones. Hard to trace. Riley tugged at his sleeve. Guys, we gotta go. Cameras are about to wake up. We slid the shoebox back into the drawer. Locked everything behind us. Walked out into the night like nothing had happened. But something had. The whole board had changed. The mastermind had a motive. The town was compromised. And my marriage was collateral damage in a war I'd never agreed to fight. As we stepped into the alley, the streetlights humming above us, Frankie asked, "What now?" I looked up at the dark windows of Harbor View, the town sleeping while its secrets rotted under its foundations. Now, I said, shutting the truck door behind me. Now we blow the lid off this place. Frankie handed me a duffel bag on Monday morning. 3 copies of everything from Mona's safety deposit box. Digitized, organized, labeled, cleaner than anything she had filed in her little gray coffin. You sure about this? He asked. More than I've ever been sure of anything. He nodded once. That was all the permission either of us needed. For the next 72 hours, I lived in the shop's back office. No customers, no calls, no sleep worth mentioning. Just a pot of burnt coffee and a burner phone Frankie had given me. While Harbor View went to work, packed lunches, walked dogs, watered lawns, I ran an exposure campaign the town would never forget. First strike, the Attorney General, anonymous packet, all files tagged and indexed, a summary written like a police report, dates, evidence, connections, indices of coercion and financial crime. Second strike, the IRS, copies of Mona's ledgers, hidden accounts, off-the-book payouts to men she kept on strings, a decade of tax fraud tied neatly with a bow. Third strike, state police, videos proving a network of officials compromised, names the department had worshipped for years, the kind of evidence they couldn't ignore even if they wanted to. I sent each from different towns, driving circles around the county until the gas tank blinked at me. Then came the part that turned Harbor View inside out. I printed flyers, hundreds, not graphic, not explicit, just enough truth to force daylight onto the things the town had agreed never to see. Dates, names, the network, the manipulation, the blackmail, the fact that the woman everyone invited to charity brunches had been running the place like a shadow mayor. I stapled them to telephone poles, slid them under doors, left them on windshields at the marina and outside the church. By the time I hit the post office bulletin board, people were already whispering. By noon, whispering turned into shouting. By evening, people were tearing them down in a panic. Too late. Dozens had already taken photos, posted them online, forwarded them to friends. Then I launched the website, harborviewsecrets.com. A simple page, white background, black text, every file uploaded. The entire structure of Mona's operation laid out like an autopsy report. It hit social media before 3 p.m. By 3:10, it was already trending locally. By 4, people were outside the police station demanding answers. Grant Hollister's office closed early. The mayor canceled a press conference. Half the school board locked their accounts. The fire chief disappeared from public view altogether. It was like watching termites scatter when the light hits them. By Thursday, the town had split into 2 camps, those who wanted my head, and those who quietly thanked the anonymous source but were too scared to say it out loud. People walked past the shop with their heads down. Some spit near the door. Others left envelopes. Some with thank you. Others with threats written in shaky pen. Frankie sat with me that night, 2 beers on the table, both unopened. "You just cracked the whole damn town in half," he said. "Good," I replied. "Means it wasn't solid to begin with." He studied me for a second. "You know they're gonna figure out who did this." I nodded. "I'm counting on it. Because this wasn't revenge anymore. This was an extraction. Severing myself from the rot once and for all. Chaos wasn't the goal, it was the byproduct. The goal was truth. And for the first time in Harborview's history, the truth wasn't something whispered about behind closed doors. It was taped to poles, blasted on screens, and clawing its way through every kitchen and office in town. Mona had spent years building a kingdom out of secrets. I lit the fuse, and now it was burning. Fast, loud, bright enough to blind everyone who'd pretended the darkness was normal. By Friday morning, Harborview was no longer a town. It was a crime scene waiting for a siren, and I wasn't done walking through it. The Harborview Fall Festival looked the same as every other year. Pumpkins, food trucks, the smell of kettle corn drifting through the park. But the crowd wasn't smiling. They were waiting, watching each other, whispering names that had been plastered across the website all week. Kids played, but their parents stared at their phones. The town wasn't celebrating, it was bracing for impact. I parked at the far end of the lot, stepped out, and walked straight toward the main stage. The conversations dipped as I passed, like someone had turned the volume knob down on the entire park. People didn't look at me with anger. They looked at me with fear. The kind you feel when you see a man who stopped being afraid of anything. Up on the stage, the mayor tried pretending everything was fine. He talked about community, unity, tradition. Every lie tasted stale in the air. I didn't wait for him to finish. I stepped up onto the stage, took the microphone from his hand, and spoke without raising my voice. "Harborview," I said. "Your secrets are choking this town." The crowd froze. Even the kids stopped running. "You've all seen the files, the messages, the recordings. You've all whispered about the website. But let's stop pretending you don't know exactly who built this mess." I pointed toward the crowd, directly at the woman standing near the front in a tailored coat and sunglasses that didn't hide anything anymore. "Mona Pierce," gasped, shuffling feet. Someone dropped a soda. Mona didn't move, didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened enough to crack a tooth. "She's been blackmailing half the leadership in this town for years," I continued. "She used people, manipulated families, destroyed marriages, controlled cops, teachers, business owners. And for what?" I let the question hang. "Revenge," I answered myself, pure and simple. She spent over a decade puppeteering Harborview to pay me back for testifying against her ex-husband, a man who put a woman in the hospital. I told the truth, and she never forgot it. Mona finally stepped forward. "Edward, stop this now." I talked to her. "You played with your life. You used my wife. You trapped the town. You built an empire out of fear." The crowd turned in unison, staring at her, watching her mask slip. That was when the sirens started in the distance. Not local cops, not town cruisers, federal. Blue jackets appeared at the end of the festival grounds, weaving between booths, moving straight toward Mona. She panicked. For the first time since I'd known her, she panicked. But before the agents reached her, somebody else made their move. Grant Hollister, face red, eyes wild, shirt half untucked like he left the house in a frenzy. Two other men followed behind him. Tom and Mike, bruises still fading from Murphy's bar. They weren't scared of Mona. They were scared of what their wives, their coworkers, and their kids now knew about them. They came straight for me. The crowd scattered, but I didn't move, didn't raise my hands, didn't blink. Grant swung first, a sloppy, desperate punch. I stepped inside it, buried a fist in his sternum, and watched the air leave him like someone unplugged his lungs. He hit the ground on his knees. Tom charged. I caught his wrist, twisted, and sent him over my hip with a clean throw that came back to me like muscle memory from a lifetime ago. Mike tried to blindside me, which told me he hadn't learned a damn thing. I pivoted, drove an elbow into his jaw, and let him fall like a dropped tool. 3 men down. No rage, no showmanship, just controlled strikes. A man protecting himself in a place that once pretended to be safe. By the time I stepped back, FBI agents were already separating the crowd. 2 agents cuffed Mona. She didn't fight, didn't speak, just stared at me with eyes full of something I didn't recognize. A mix of hatred and grudging respect. "You think this fixes anything?" she hissed as they walked her past me. "It wasn't meant to fix," I said. "It was meant to expose." She didn't look back. The crowd wasn't cheering. They weren't booing. They were stunned. Like a whole lifetime of pretending had finally shattered under their feet. I lifted the microphone one last time. "The files are already in federal hands," I said. "Copies exist outside this town. No one can bury it anymore. Not me. Not you. Not her." Then I set the microphone down, stepped off the stage, and walked through the chaos like it was nothing more than smoke clearing after an engine fire. People pushed back to make room for me. Not out of fear, not out of awe, because for the first time, Harborview wasn't looking at the man who burned the town down. They were looking at the man who refused to lie for it. I walked toward my truck, the festival exploding behind me, and didn't look back. The reckoning was done. But I wasn't finished moving forward. By the time I reached the gravel lot, the FBI caravans had already pulled in. Black SUVs lined the curb like punctuation marks at the end of Harborview's story. Agents pushed past me with clipped orders and radios buzzing. Someone shouted Mona's name. Someone else reported they'd found Grant still wheezing on the festival grass. EMTs rushed toward the stage with stretchers. And me? I just kept walking. An agent brushed my arm. "Sir, we may need a statement from—" "You will," I said. "Check your email." He blinked. "Your email?" "I sent the files 3 days ago," I said. "All of them." Recognition hit him. Then respect. Then something like relief. "We'll be in touch shortly, Mr. Malone." I nodded and kept moving. Past the popcorn stand. Past the families pretending not to stare. Past the men who'd called me a monster a week ago but couldn't look me in the eye now. A reporter sprinted across the field, microphone in hand, panting. "Mr. Malone. Eddie, do you have anything to say about Mona Pierce's arrest?" I didn't stop walking. "Yeah," I said over my shoulder. I told the truth. That was it. That was all Harborview ever needed, and all it ever avoided. As I approached my truck, 2 smaller figures broke through the crowd. My kids. Stopped me. Not physically, but enough that I turned. They looked shaken, lost, older than they were a week ago. My daughter's eyes were red. My son's jaw clenched like he was trying to hold something together inside himself. "Dad," my son said quietly, "is it true? All of it?" I nodded once. "I wish it wasn't. But yeah." My daughter looked up at me. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "I didn't want you to hate her," I said. "And I didn't want you to hate me for telling you." Their eyes shifted, realization settling in a place that used to be angry. My son swallowed it. What happens now? You live your life, I said. When you're ready to hear everything, really hear it. I'll be here. No pressure. No timeline. My daughter stepped forward first. Not a hug. Not forgiveness. Just a hand on my arm. Light. Real. A promise instead of a resolution. Be safe, Dad, she whispered. I always am, I said. She almost smiled. They stepped back into the crowd as their mother, escorted by 2 officers for her own protection, watched from a distance. Celia didn't speak, didn't move toward me, didn't look away either. She finally saw what Harbor View had turned me into, and what it had turned her into as well. My phone buzzed as I opened the truck door. A text from an unknown number. Federal DOJ, Mr. Malone, we've reviewed your submission. You are considered a key witness. We'll coordinate with you soon. Thank you for your cooperation. I locked the screen. Key witness. Funny how fast a town's villain becomes the government's asset. I climbed into the truck, closed the door like sealing off an old life, started the engine. The festival chaos blurred in the rearview mirror as I pulled away. Sirens, agents, neighbors shouting. The carnival lights flickering like the last sparks of a dying fire. Harbor View wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never had been. But the road in front of me? That belonged to me now. No lies, no secrets, no masks. Just a man who burned down a rotten house and walked out without a scorch mark he didn't earn. For the first time in 18 years, I felt light. Not happy, not healed, free. I shifted into gear, pressed the gas, and left Harbor View behind, with the truth trailing behind me like a clean-cut shadow.